Hi guys, and I'm Retro Critic here. And today, I'll be reviewing and talking about just more of my thoughts on the rest of the SpongeBob seasons and just my overall thoughts on like the SpongeBob franchise series. Yeah, I'll be reviewing and talking about just kind of the rest of all the remaining SpongeBob seasons now, and just my overall thoughts on just the SpongeBob series and franchise as a whole. So yeah, I just want to give more of my thoughts on that. So I just want to say that I want to say that first off, yeah. So in my previous video, I did kind of talk about like the Paul Tibbitt seasons more. Now when I made the show called the Patrick Star Show. Oh geez, they made more ridiculous spin-offs. Oh my god. Okay, we'll get to that one at a time. But I just want to say that yeah. So last time I talked about like the Paul Tibbitt seasons, and I said that Steven Hillenburg left the show after that, and Steven Hillenburg left the show after the first movie. Yeah, Steven Hillenburg left the show after the first movie, and he gave the reins to Paul. He gave the reins to Paul Tibbitt. So Paul Tibbitt took over the show after Steven Hillenburg left the show, and Paul Tibbitt basically became like the guy that's like the head of the show. He runs the show now, and basically around season 4 to season 8, people call it the Paul Tibbitt era. But basically, yeah, season 4 to season 8, he'll basically call that the Paul Tibbitt era of SpongeBob seasons. And it was where, it was almost like after the movie, they were trying to find ways to continue the SpongeBob story. Like after, it was almost like, starting around season 4, it was almost like after the movie, they were trying to find ways to continue the SpongeBob story. And but they like wanted to do something different, and it's like they did it in their own weird, creative way. Like, well, the point is, yeah, so these, like, season 4 to 8, like, these seasons, like, yeah, they were doing their own thing, they wanted to do something different, do their own creative way, and they wanted to do their own thing, and you can kind of say they were just kind of, like, doing their own thing. They're being their own thing of these seasons. And overall, like, yeah, people think these were the worst seasons, people think these were the worst shitty seasons. Well, they get worse after that, but they get a little better. Well, when Steven Hillenburg returns after the second movie, after Steven Hillenburg returns, it gets a little better. It improves. We'll get to that. But people think that the Paul Tibbitt seasons are the worst seasons. Like I said in my previous video, people kind of feel like the Paul Tibbitt seasons were the worst seasons, and I can see why. Like as I said in the last video, people feel like the Paul Tibbitt seasons are the worst, and I can see why. I mean, it does get worse later on. I think they're less bad now, but people do feel like as though the Paul Tibbitt seasons were like the worst seasons, and I can see why. And it does get worse in later on seasons, and it makes these seasons look less bad, to be honest with you. But overall, but it does get better. But the show does get better. But to be fair, the show has recently improved. And we'll get to that, and I'll get into that as to why later on. But here's the thing, and let me just say about the cast, because like I said, yeah, Tom Kenny as SpongeBob is always great. Tom Kenny as SpongeBob is always good. Bill Fagpog is great as Patrick. I always like Bill Fagpog as Patrick. Clancy Brown as Mr. Krabs is always good. It's always good. He's awesome as Mr. Krabs. He's awesome as Mr. Krabs. He's awesome as Mr. Krabs. Mr. Clancy Brown is always great as Mr. Krabs. And Clancy Brown is such a legend, and he's always as usual does an amazing job on Mr. Krabs. Roger Bumpkus, I always like Roger Bumpkus, but he does a great job as Squirtle. He always does good as Squirtle. I always like Roger Bumpkus, but Roger Bumpkus always does a really good job on Squirtle. And you got Mr. Lawrence as Plankton, and Mr. Lawrence as Plankton is really good. I always like Mr. Lawrence as Plankton. And Mr. Lawrence as Plankton, he does like a good job of playing, of course, as always. You got John Ray Davis as Man Ray. John Ray Davis Man Ray is really good. I always like John Ray Davis Man Ray. I mean, John Ray Davis as Man Ray does a really good job here. And of course, you got there's a piece like Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway as Merman and Barnacle Glory. Ernest Borgnine, I always like Ernest Borgnine and Barnacle. They're really good here. May they rest in peace, but Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway as Merman and Barnacle Glory, they're really great here. But Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway, they're really good here as Merman and Barnacle Glory, as usual. Oh, they always do a good job. As usually, they're amazing. They're great, and they're amazing, and they always do a good job on them. That's the cast. That's the cast. How I feel about it. So that's how I feel about the cast. Also the first movie, I feel like the first movie was a good send-off. It was good. It was a good ending closure. The second movie was also a good send-off, but they need more. They keep milking and making more. First movie was a good send-off, and the first movie was a good ending to SpongeBob. Okay, it was a good ending to SpongeBob, and the first movie was a good send-off to SpongeBob. But no, they keep milking it and making more. And even the second movie was a good send-off to SpongeBob. The second movie was a good ending to SpongeBob. Okay, it was a good ending to SpongeBob, and even the second movie was a good send-off to SpongeBob, where it was closure, a good ending to SpongeBob. But no, they keep making more. They keep milking it, making more, and all that stuff. It's just ridiculous. And and it was good, and it was just a good, just kind of way to end SpongeBob there. But no, they make more. They want to milk it. Who knows how long Nickelodeon's gonna milk it? And who knows how long Nickelodeon's gonna keep making SpongeBob. It was a good ending. It was just a good way they ended it there. It was just a good ending right there. But no, they keep milking. They keep making more. It was just a good way they. It was just a good ending they had there. But no, they keep milking. They keep making more. And who knows how long it was gonna milk? Who knows how long it was gonna keep making more SpongeBob? And who knows how long Nickelodeon's gonna keep milking SpongeBob? And who knows how long Nickelodeon's gonna keep making more SpongeBob? Yeah, I mean, basically, but around the Paul Tibbet seasons, yeah, you have what's called Squidward torture porn, where Squidward gets tortured a lot. Now, there's less Squidward torture porn later on, but like I said, there's like tons of Squidward you have something that's called Squidward torture porn, where Squidward gets tortured a lot for laughs and jokes and make fun of his depression, and it's messed up. And it's less like that, but in later seasons, they do less Squidward torture porn. I mean, you do still get your Squidward torture porn, don't get me wrong, but there's less Squidward torture porn in later seasons. You know, they make more. I mean, it's still messed up. They make fun of us and try to torture. I mean, you get your Squidward torture porn. I mean, it's just messed up when they make fun of us. It's messed up when they make fun of his depression, torture Squidward. It's messed up when they try to torture Squidward as a joke, as for laughs, as for jokes. You know, but overall, and it's just crazy how, I mean, you get less of that now, thankfully, but you get, the point is, yeah, you get less of that now, but you do get more of that. You get more of Squidward torture porn. You get more Squidward torture porn, don't get me wrong. You get less of it now, but you get more Squidward. You get less of that now, but you do get more Squidward torture porn, don't get me wrong, something like that. And also, in the Paul Tibbet seasons, they made Mr. Krabs like a cheapskate a-hole, asshole. Now, he's less of that now. He's still a cheapskate, but they may make him less of an asshole in later seasons, to be fair. But in the Paul Tibbet seasons, they make Mr. Krabs more of a cheapskate asshole in those seasons, a-hole in those seasons. And to be fair, in the later seasons, they still have him as a cheapskate, but they make him less of an asshole in later seasons. But still, so it's just taking away the heart and soul of these characters. SpongeBob, and they make Patrick even more dumber. I mean, they make Patrick even more dumber, and the problem is, that's the whole appeal of Patrick. He was like an idiot that actually, does convenient things, and it's kind of funny, but here they just make him clueless, and I hate that. SpongeBob, he was a straight guy. Yeah, he has his moments, but but they make him so too joyful, because the moments SpongeBob is relatable and human and angry and has all sorts of emotions. Here they just make sort of one-dimensional and just joyful. They literally prove that they give him more depth and character, thankfully, but still. And like I said, so it's just kind of, it's frustrating. And like I said, the Paul Tibbet seasons, they make Patrick even more of an idiot. I mean, the deal of Patrick was his stupidity was the funny, his being conveniently an idiot, and his stupidity was the funny part about that. We kind of laugh at his stupidity, and he actually, but his stupidity, as I was a story, we just laugh at his stupidity. Here, they just make Patrick even more clueless. I mean, yeah, Patrick's a moron, but he's not he's not that much of an idiot. In the later seasons, they make Patrick an even more clueless moron, and they take away the appeal of why Patrick's idiocy work. Just shitty, dumb work, because, Patrick's a stupid, dumb, look, he's a dumb moron, don't get me wrong, but Patrick's not that much of an idiot, and they just make him a clueless, moron. They make him a clueless moron, that's the frustrating part. They just took away the appeal of Patrick, basically, what made it funny. Patrick's not that much of an idiot, but here, they just make Patrick a clueless moron, and I hate that, so they basically just took away the appeal of Patrick. I can go on. Here in SpongeBob, they make SpongeBob, okay, at least in the early seasons, yes, SpongeBob he was straight, he was more of a straight guy character, protagonist, and, he was at least more depth and, a little more two-dimensional. He has all sorts, here, they just make one-dimensional, joyful and happy. They improve that, but here, at least, SpongeBob, in the early seasons, SpongeBob was angry, you see all sides of his character. He was angry, emotional, he was human, he was human, he was relatable, he had more depth, he was two-dimensional, but he had more depth. Here, in the later seasons, like the Paul Tibbet seasons, they make SpongeBob one-dimensional, and they just make him way too all joyful and happy, and that's just his personality. And to be fair, now, in the even more later seasons, they do less of that now. Now they give him more depth, they give him more emotion, he's two-dimensional instead of one-dimensional, he's not one-dimensional anymore. So they give him more depth and emotion later. So later on in the later seasons, he's two-dimensional instead of one-dimensional. He's not one-dimensional anymore. I like how in later seasons, he's no longer one-dimensional anymore, he's more two-dimensional, and now he's more two-dimensional now. And so they give more, so they give back his emotions, they give more of his nuanced character. So they give more character development, they give more nuance of the character, thankfully. Because, but nowadays, they think they give SpongeBob more of his emotions again. They give SpongeBob, nowadays, they kind of show more of SpongeBob's relatable personality. So nowadays, you do see more of SpongeBob's, relatable personality and all that stuff. but still, what they done to start out the Paul Tibbetts season. But what they done to start out the Paul Tibbetts seasons was like the worst. And I'll go on and on. So the Paul Tibbetts seasons were just really not that good. But later, Paul Tibbetts left the show and someone else took over, but still. And this is where Steven Hillenburg returns. I'll get to that. I mean, the Paul Tibbetts seasons were really bad, but oh my goodness. I know Paul Tibbetts was bad, oh my goodness. So, but later on, Paul Tibbetts did left the show, and this is where Steven Hillenburg returns. And this is where Steven Hillenburg returns. And after the second movie, Steven Hillenburg returns, and he actually slightly proved better. And once Steven Hillenburg returns from the series as an executive producer, the series actually improved a little bit. The series got a little better later on, honestly. The series got a little better later on, honestly. And as you know, of course, etc., then other people take over, and you know what happened. But, God. Then SpongeBob gets worse again. I mean, right when it was good, it gets bad again. It gets worse again. I mean, oh, God. And there was, like, this whole controversy of Camp Coral, like, Steven didn't want spin-offs, and there's, like, other guy, like, saying, he would have approved Camp Coral. And Paul Tibbetts on Twitter said, like, oh, no, he would not, this ruins his legacy. There's a whole controversy of that, and it makes Paul Tibbetts look good, oh my God. And later on, like I said, now, Paul Tibbetts did left the show. Paul Tibbetts left the show. Paul Tibbetts did left the show, other people have taken over, and all that stuff, and, I think Paul Tibbetts did. Well, Paul Tibbetts does maybe executive produce the show every now and then. He's an executive producer. And Paul Tibbetts he comes back to the show every now and then. I think Paul Tibbetts is still an executive producer still. I don't know, but here's the thing. I don't know, but, it's still. But here's the thing. And what's so funny is, oh my God, this makes him look good because, it gets crazy. But the Paul Tibbetts were bad, but this gets, I know the Paul Tibbetts were bad, but this is just worse, okay? God, I know the Paul Tibbetts seasons were, like, really bad, but this just makes it worse when I see Camp Coral and all that stuff. And it gets worse, guys. So, like I said, there's, like, this whole controversy of Camp Coral, a CGI series, and there was this whole controversy of this guy saying, "Oh no, Steven Hillenburg would approve it. Steven Hillenburg would have been okay with Camp Coral." And Paul Tibbetts on Twitter says, "No, he would not approve Camp Coral. He would not approve Camp Coral, and it ruins his legacy. And he wanted no spin-offs." And Paul Tibbetts on Twitter says, like, "No, he would not have been okay with Camp Coral doing spin-offs." And he says this ruins Steven Hillenburg's legacy and all that stuff. And this makes Paul Tibbetts look good. God, I never thought I'd say that. Okay. I never thought I would say it. And like I said, I know there's other people now running the series of SpongeBob, but still, and they make these other spin-offs where there's the controversy whether Steven would want spin-offs. And look, like I said, this makes Paul Tibbetts look good because he's like defending his old friend and colleague, Steven Hillenburg, whether he wanted spin-offs in this case. There's all kind of whether he wants he's defending his like colleague and friend Steven Hillenburg, and Tibbetts basically defending his friend and colleague Steven Hillenburg whether like he would have wanted spin-offs or not. And Paul Tibbetts saying this ruins Steven Hillenburg's legacy and all that stuff. And like, look, it's been said that Steven Hillenburg, there's a whole controversy around whether Steven Hillenburg wants spin-offs and whether this ruins his legacy. Because look, there was a whole controversy around where Steven Hillenburg did at one point said that, SpongeBob was never meant to have spin-offs and all that stuff. So there's a whole controversy of that, and I could go on. I could go on. There's a whole controversy of that. And like I said, SpongeBob gets worse and worse, and just when it was getting better, it just gets worse now. Just when SpongeBob was getting good, it gets worse. It gets bad again. Just when SpongeBob was getting better, it gets worse again. But still. And just oh God. And I know there's like this movie called the SpongeBob movie 3, of SpongeBob on the Run, the SpongeBob movie 4, the Search for SpongeBob SquarePants, which I hear they're decent, the CGI movies, and all that stuff, but still. But then there's like these other SpongeBob spin-off movies, like the Plankton movie and the Sandy Cheeks movie, and oh my God. I could go on and on. And what's crazy is, oh God, and then there's like this show called, like, the Patrick Star Show. Like, who asked for this? That show is just laughably bad. To be fair, I can laugh how bad it is. God, there's Camp Coral. Then there's like a show called the Patrick Star Show, and oh my God, like, who asked for this? Who's asking for this, Like, who's asking for this? Seriously. But look, I can at least, I can at least laugh. I can just laugh how bad that show is, but I can at least laugh how bad that show is. I can just laugh at how, like, really bad and terrible, like, that show was. Oh my God. And look, like, so I can at least laugh at how laughably bad that show is. That Patrick Star Show. Oh my God. And look, I could go on and on. And look, that's kind of all I gotta say with SpongeBob. Who knows what will happen to SpongeBob and all that stuff. And look, I hear they made like I said, they made these CGI spin-off movies. Yeah, they made these CGI spin-off movies. One of them's called the Sandy Cheeks movie. The other one's like the Plankton movie. Yeah, one of them's called the Sandy Cheeks movie. Now they recently made like another, like, they made like a Plankton movie and all that stuff. Who knows? And then I did hear they made like a Sweater Movie 3. They made like a theatrical Sweater movie called like SpongeBob movie. SpongeBob, SpongeBob on the Run, something like that. And they made another theatrical Sweater movie. Recently, they're now a new theatrical Spider movie's coming out. There's a new Spider movie coming out, and it's like the Spider Movie 4, and it's basically called the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Yeah, it's basically called like the Search for SpongeBob SquarePants, something like that. And it's like, you know, the CGI movies, and I hear that one's pretty decent. That one looks pretty good for once. Enjoy it, like, okay, wow, and it's where the CGI, and it's where like the characters are CGI in that movie. But look, and it's like the CGI movie with characters, and it's like where the characters are CGI in that movie. And I hear they're decent, and like, look, I mean, overall, that's all I gotta say. Look, I mean, it's just what's crazy is, I just feel like, the SpongeBob movie, like, yeah, like, wow, another theatrical SpongeBob movie. Look, I mean, I hear that's good. They're making a new, you know, I hear there's a new theatrical SpongeBob movie coming out, and I hear that's good. So there's a new SpongeBob movie coming out, and I hear that's good. So I hear, and it looks good to me, you know, from what I've seen. But from what I've seen, it looks pretty good to me, really. I hear it looks good. I hear that's good. I hear that's good. It does look good to me. Look, I could go on and like, look, I mean, I don't know the future for SpongeBob, but it looks decent to me. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long Nickelodeon will milk this cow. I don't know how long Nickelodeon will milk this cow of SpongeBob. Who knows what will be the future of SpongeBob? But right now, I don't know how long Nickelodeon will milk this cow of SpongeBob. The future of SpongeBob looks decent to me, to be fair, but still, so I gotta say. And look, but look, like I said, guys, who knows how long Nickelodeon's gonna milk this cow of SpongeBob? But, you know, to be honest with you, I mean, personally, I just feel like the future of SpongeBob looks decent, to be honest with you. You know, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. But look, but that's kind of all I gotta say, guys. Those are my thoughts on the current state of SpongeBob and all that stuff, and that's how I feel about that. You know, that's how I feel about that. And those are my thoughts on just what's going on. But overall, guys, yeah, those are my thoughts on what's going on with SpongeBob. And overall, guys, yeah, those are my thoughts on just like the current state of SpongeBob, SquarePants, you know, something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But current news and all that stuff, you know, you can say SpongeBob, SquarePants, you know. But overall, guys, yeah, just my thoughts on just the current state of SpongeBob, SquarePants, you know. Those are my thoughts on that. But overall, guys, yeah, I mean, that's all I gotta say. And yeah, overall, guys, I'm Retro Critic, and I'm out. And guys, I'll see you guys later. And guys, I'll see you guys around. And peace out, and bye.